Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bidoof's Champion Showdown Tournament Season 2, baby! It is so good to get all of you back. Hello, hello, my name is Anthony Tony Bidoof Pappas, and I will be emceeing tonight, joined by my lovely co-host.
My name is Brady B. Radical, and it's nice to finally get this season rolling, guys. I know we've all been waiting for this for a while, so without further ado, let's kind of jump right on into this. So, Anthony, do you want to explain kind of how we ranked and what we're ranking by?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, every year we do two of these. We do one at the start and one mid-season, kind of rank the teams, giving our opinion, giving some feedback. It's mostly for newer players that don't know what they can get into, or just anybody who kind of wants advice on their team. But it's just our opinion on what we thought of the teams for this initial ranking. We're just taking the teams into performance as well. We're not considering coaches' abilities because we haven't seen everybody's abilities, especially this season. So we're just going to take a look at the teams and see what we thought of them, what we thought we could improve, what we thought was a little weaker. But there was I was really happy to see some really cool teams, some really cool synergies come out. Everybody surprised me this season with some cool fun stuff, and I'm
Oh, for
excited to get into
sure.
the season. So Brady, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I just want to kind of reiterate one more time. Just remember that these rankings are purely on the teams themselves, and this is just Tony and my ability to rank these teams. We're not experts by any means. We have some more experience than some other players, but all in all, I mean, this is just our opinion over how these teams look initially. You could definitely have some plans for these teams that we're not seeing right now that could blow us out of the water. So this is just our opinion. This is, in fact, this is just kind of the subjective experience that we have for you. So take it as you will. But that being said, this is kind of our general synopsis. So
Yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely love to see anybody blow me out of the water with a strat. I'm not.
amen.
That's my favorite is when I get sidewinded by something I totally didn't see coming. So, um, by all means, take this with a grain of salt. But all right, we won't keep you waiting too long. We'll jump right into it. So Brady will go first, and I will go second for all the teams. So Brady, do you want to start with our number 10, essentially?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me get into this a little bit here. So, in our number 10 slot, we have Mundie. Mundie's team is effectively, he's running a sand team with a Powdon. He's got some tanks inside of his team, Corviknight, Sylveon, that kind of balance that out a little bit. Um, and that was kind of, initially, that was one of the first things that I noticed that I really appreciated about his team. He's got some good synergy between his tanks that I think could really end up working out for him and pivot in well with one another. So that's the first thing that I noticed about his team. I also like Swampert on his team. I think Swampert brings a cool addition to the team with that water typing that can help support some of the other members of his team. I like Flygon in the sand. Flygon works really, really well. Um, Iron Thorns I think can work really, really well because it gets that special defense buff, which is really, really cool. And then also Roaring Moon coming in for a late game sweep is always very, very nice. It can come in with immediate damage, or then it can potentially sweep in the future. So all of that to say, I think that those items can pair really, really well together, especially with a sand team that's constantly chipping people down. With your tanks, you can pivot them in and out and chip people down over time, which is really, really nice. Um, some of the cons that I noticed probably about your team is incredibly weak to the ice type, which is one of the most common offensive types. You have just a couple of switch-ins that are neutral or worse, and as a result, you probably will end up running into a lot of people running that typing against you, especially if they're going to run water ice against you. I mean, that's going to be very difficult for your team to be able to cover. Um, Additionally, with your team, I noticed that uh, there are a lot of mons that don't really have like immediate power when coming in, especially like special attacking power. Sylveon definitely has that, but that being said, it's not fast enough to really effectuate that in a way that allows it to be meaningful in a lot of capacities. So I think that your team, you definitely have a good idea here for a sand team. One of my biggest recommendations for you on this team is I love Corviknight. I think he's a great Mon, and I love some of the facts about him, but I don't know if he's necessarily the Mon for you this game because of your Sylveon and Hippowdon already kind of covering your two tanks in both of those different regards. I think you can afford to drop Corviknight potentially and maybe end up picking Excadrill. Excadrill would provide a lot of late game sweeping for you that could really, really be like that immediate power that I was talking about. So you could have him kind of come through and deal some damage initially, and then Roaring Moon come in for the setup and then sweep, or vice versa. And there's not a lot of teams that can really do much about that. The other thing is, like I said, your team is very, very weak to the ice type. Maybe consider picking up another Mon that could resist that better. And for the water type, maybe you have to pick up something that could potentially deal with that. Water absorb Cacturn would be an idea for that. That Mon typically works well in the sand. Thus I guess the cactus. So those are a couple ideas that I have for you, but all in all, a very solid team, and I'm excited to see how you use it this season. So, Anthony, I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, I was really I don't know, I really wanted to put this team higher because I I agree with you. The Excadrill switch does make sense with the overall team. The Roaring Moon Corviknight Sylveon core though, I think is probably the strongest tri-core currently in the league that I really can see. Um, it's I don't know, it just covers a lot of fronts. Um, that being said, having a sand sweeper would be really nice, and this team really does kind of need some special sweeping. It's just there's a lot of physically defensive mons. There's a lot of similar typing with like a special sweeper or with some different typing that is going to resist your core weaknesses of ice and water. Um, I think this team would really improve. Um, I that being said, I hate to give up anything of that core. So like I guess there could be potential for switching out something else for it. But really I think at the end of the day you only have so many points. Um, the Regirock and Golem are also it's really cool to see some of those mons come out, but I think they do a lot of the same things as some of your other mons. Um, they they don't do the same thing as Iron Thorns does at all, but like they do fulfill similar roles, and traditionally they're kind of like explode explode mons. So while that's good and all, it feels like there's a lot of similar mons here, and especially with both Flygon and Roaring Moon kind of being your powerful setup dragons. I think you need something else there to really kind of resist, and then a special sweeper to threaten as well. So, because I don't think Sylveon learns any kind of speed boost, anything. It's just got that pixelate, which is good, but it's not enough to carry your team. I mean, really, the only real special sweeper or special attacker on your team is Sylveon. So, um, that's something I'd look into. If you're really, wanting to stick tanky, pick up a cleric, but um, I think, or a cleric by meaning like a wish passer. But I think this team could either, yeah, it could do really good with like an Excadrill, some kind of sand sweeper, and then some kind of resist. So I would move around some mons to make that happen if I
And
were you.
and to be fair, Lucario can be split, so it can run in
Yeah,
either direction,
that's true.
which is
That's
very.
true.
It could run special, it could run physical, but if you're gonna be bringing it and you're
But
gonna
it's
have
more of
this
a
team,
bruiser instead of a sweeper in
for
that
sure, for
regard.
sure. Yeah, and I cannot agree with that more. And if you're gonna bring it on a team, people are gonna know immediately. Like one of the biggest things about Lucario is that it has that split. But if you're gonna bring it on this team, I'm gonna know every single time pretty much that it's gonna be that special. So
Hmm.
if I
And
look at this, that's a weakness of it as well.
it again, it's such a a cool core, that Roaring Moon Corviknight Sylveon, but it might not be the best. But it if I really want to figure out a way it can fit, but I don't see how it can fit if you want to pick up some of these other mons to kind of shore up your weaknesses. So
Well, and keep in mind he's got 60 points left. So if he traded an Iron Thorns for Excadrill, like he'd be down to 0 then. So like
that's
that is a
true.
potential swap that he could make, and honestly, I think that would be a beneficial thing, and you could still keep Corviknight on your team. So there are ways that you can get around that. But that being said, I think those are my recommendations. Anthony, did you have anything else there?
No, I think that's it. I think we can move on. Great team, Mundie, especially, coming out here. I'm expecting you to sweep everybody.
I believe in the dream.
All right, let's move on to Tyler. What did you think of Tyler, Brady? Or
So I
Tyler's
know
team? I
I
know.
know Tyler, you and I had talked about this before. So I'll keep it a little bit more brief on my side. But that being said, pros, you had some very strong attackers on your team, like Chan Pao and Zapdos Galarian, mixed with Hisui and Typhlosion. Great synergy between those three mons. All of these mons are incredibly dangerous. Hisui and Typhlosion having Eruption, like Choice Scarf Eruption on Hisui and Typhlosion, is incredibly dangerous this season. There's not a lot of mons that really like coming into that. Um, Zapdos Galar is one of the strongest of the bird trio, and I think probably the strongest behind maybe Galarian Moltres, but that's debatable at best. So, anyways, I like that mon a lot. And then Shan Pao, obviously incredibly threatening physical sweeper this tier. I don't think anyone can disagree that it's probably the most threatening physical sweeper that we have inside of the game right now. Um, but that being said, I would say the thing about your team is that it's a little unbalanced on the con side. So, firstly, you have a lot of very strong physical attackers, but you don't have a whole lot of special coverage to boot. As a result, you're going to find a lot of people are going to be able to run very physically tanking mons against you, and they might be able to wall you as a result. Typhlosion Hisuian, along with your Gardevoir are your two kind of major exceptions to that. Duraludon to some degree as well, I would say.
Manectric, too.
Yeah. Manectric's a little.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it is it, it's feasible to bring it, but that being said, it was a last pick for a reason. And I think that's just because it just doesn't have the bulk to be able to really do much with itself. But sure. Um. So I would say in that regard, I would recommend getting a different special mon that can deal a bunch of damage. And maybe you bring in like a especially tanky mon too, because that's another thing on your team that I don't see a whole lot of. I see a lot of very physically defensive mons. But on the special side, I think you're a little bit weaker there as well. And to boot, in regards to tanks, a lot of your tanks function very similarly. Duraludon, Garganacl, Tinglu all have very similar weaknesses. And as a result, people might be able to take advantage of that to really hurt your team a lot. The ground type is very good against your team, admittedly. Garganacl is very, very weak to that. Typhlosion Hisuian is very, very weak to that. So I would say that just in regards to that, you may want to consider dropping either Tinglu or Garganacl and trading them out for something else. One of my biggest recommendations for that would be um, maybe trading Tinglu out if you're going to keep Qian Pao because they function very similarly. Or if you're going to trade Qian Pao out, maybe you consider keeping Tinglu and dropping Garganacl. I mean, you've got definite options and all of that, but that being said, you have a lot of similarly coveraged mons, and as a result, your team is going to be a little bit unbalanced in that regard. So, those are my recommendations. Anthony, what did you have?
Um, you know, I put this team at 7. I thought it had pretty good coverage. I see what you're saying, but it does seem like, especially with the move pool of some of these mons, like they're all over the place, right? Because all of the older mons typically have that huge move pool, right? Especially like Typhlosion, Cloyster, that Gardevoir, that kind of thing. Um, that being said, what I did have down for this team is it's pretty specially weak in terms of the tanking side. Duraludon can definitely tank some. Gardevoir can definitely tank some. But at the end of the day, what I would have to do for this team is just bring a really strong setup, special sweeper, and it would be over, right? I don't see a lot of blockers here that are really going to stop me. Um, Another thing, it does. to your point of special, I mean, there are special mons here, but they just don't feel like they're really. Well, I don't know. They don't. There's nothing here that can like really sweep specially. Like Gardevoir and Typhlosion are your best bets, and then Superior and Manectric are kind of there. I found Superior is kind of hard to use because of its small move pool. Um, but there's nothing like really fast that's like really out there and screams to me. Um, you know, I'm gonna specially sweep. Samurot's also kind of a hard mon to work around, especially in this team. I'm not sure that he has much of a place. It's a lot of offense besides the Tinglu and the Garganacl. Um, I guess the Duraludon too, but um, it just feels a little unbalanced to me. Like it's a lot of cool mons, and I'm seeing a lot of like cool synergies that could be here, but really I'm only seeing the synergies offensively. There's no like backbone to the team. So that being said, Chen Pao and like Tinglu or Garganacl is like super strong, especially lately, right? So and I think the Gardevoir is a great attempt to make up for that um, special kind of weakness there. But I think there could be a couple switches here that could really make this team shine. So that's my thoughts on Tyler. Anything else?
No, I think we pretty well covered it here. Tyler,
Yeah.
if you have any questions, always talk to me too. I can always talk to you
Yeah,
some more about all
it's
of
a
this.
good
So
team. I could see some exciting things come out of it, but it might
I
improve with
agree.
some modifications. All right, next we have uh, Captain Pufferfish Noah at 8th place.
Okay. Um, so let me talk about some of the pros on your team, Noah. I really like your hyper offensive team. So your balance between Blaziken, Greninja, and Dragapult, those three mons in particular are going to be able to come in and revenge kill anything they want in this game. I mean, like they are so fast and so strong that between the three of them, it's going to be very, very difficult for a mon to be able to come in, set up, and then just sweep, right? Um, Additionally, Glamora is in a great suicide lead for your team. It'll allow you to set up, for your sweepers to come in and get chip against some of those mons that may be able to tank a couple of hits from your mon. So that's really, really helpful for that. Um, so that has some nice synergy there. Um, and since Bidoof, may his name be eternal, must be your team
Amen.
captain, your team kind of has is easier to predict than other teams are. So you need to add some unpredictable elements to your team, which Greninja does incredibly well. Greninja is Protean. Greninja can also be physical or special. I mean, you could say the same for a couple of these mons, but that being said, like Dragapult, um, Blaziken, and Greninja can all function a little bit this way, and they all can kind of be whatever you need them to be inside of a specific game. So, like that being said, like you've done a good job at making your team less predictable as a result of you losing your Terra. So I would say cons. Your team, besides Togekiss and Iron Treads, has zero defense to it. It has no defense to it. It's very. If someone comes in with a bulky setup mon, they could potentially sweep your entire team if you're not incredibly careful in planning around that. Um, as a result, I think that's probably your team's biggest weakness. Um, I would say you need some tank in between those mons just so that you can pivot through, because obviously for those mons to be able to come in, they need to have momentum with them for them to really get that revenge kill like I was talking about. So things can get a little dicey with those ones. Additionally, your team is also weak to both ground and ice. Those are the two most common offensive coverage moves. So if someone comes in with neutral moves like those or something along those lines, they could mess up your team really, really quickly. I mean, Dragapult, it's not a tank. It's not going to be able to tank anything. Glamora's got a double weakness to ground. Venusaur's neutral to ground. Lycanroc's weak to ground. Jolteon's weak to ground. Tauros is neutral to ground. I mean, like, you just go through your entire team and you can see what I'm talking about when I say there are very few answers to a couple of the most common threats on your team. So when I'm looking at your team, I'm seeing some real defensive holes. I'm seeing a really good offensive set. But that being said, the defensive part of your team really needs to get buffed up a little bit here, in my opinion. So my recommendation for your team, maybe find a physical tank that balances out Togekiss really, really well. Dondozo could work, or Iron Hands, which is funny because I know you traded Iron Hands.
Mm-hmm.
And then also another thing, if you're going to do a lot of switching around between your 3 different revenge killing mons, you're going to be doing a lot of switching. So hazards are going to be very bad against your team. So you need to be very conscious of those when you're playing the game, because if somebody gets a bunch of hazards on you, it's going to be it's going to break any focus sashes that you might have for your heavy sweepers, and B, it's going to make it so that they're constantly getting chipped down, and it's going to hurt them a lot. So that being said, just be conscious of those 2 things, and I think that your team will improve dramatically.
Yeah.
I'm gonna back to you, Anthony.
Yeah. Yeah, when I saw this team, it is just offense to the max, which is pretty cool. I mean, you do have some really cool combos, especially against something where you can set up any of these mons, it's going to be crazy. That being said, I had you at 8th. I wrote down that you were just you were lacking in the tanky side, and it felt kind of like it was a little I don't know, it was a little all over the place. So it's a lot of strong sweeper mons, but they don't have that kind of backbone. Yeah, as Brady said, the Glamora to tank specially, the Iron Treads to tank physically. I think you picked up the Venusaur to tank specially. I don't know if it's a particularly good special tank for that, but it might be. Um, yeah, I gotta. But either way, as soon as you drop it, I gotta snipe it. So, um, let's see what else. The the Togekiss could specially tank too, but it really doesn't have an answer to as Brady said, a bulkier setup mon. It's very weak against bruisers. Um, there's no cleric either. Not that you need a cleric on a sweeping team like this, but you kind of get my gist. That being said, there's a lot of offensive coverage here. You cover a lot with these mons, uh, so you don't really have to worry about that. But I think some of the more very aggressive, in Rock Dusk, or maybe the Tauros or the Jolteon, mons that are really fast revenge killers, you don't need it as much because you have that Dragapult Blaziken Greninja combination, right? So I would consider looking around for something a little more physically bulky, and the lower tiers tend to have more physically bulky mons for that purpose. Um, so yeah, with a little bit of balance, this team is going to be absolutely gnarly. That the speed, I mean, you outspeed so many mons in this tournament. So I think it's got a tremendous potential, but we'll see how you use it too. So, all right. Next on the list is Will, or Mercury, or Gold to Mercury.
Oh, is that what I didn't even know that's what that stood for. I know both of those symbols, but without the capitalization, I would have had no idea.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. All right, I love alchemy. Let's keep talking. So pros to your team. So I think your team has excellent tank synergy for a stall team, like between Bliss, Skelligurge, those 2 in particular, but also Slowbro on top of that, have an incredibly nice balance between the 3 of them. Those 3 right there are going to be a bitch to deal with in game. I'm just going to say it frankly here, because those 3 are so good together. Enough said about that, I guess. I don't even really know how people would address that besides toxicking a lot of those mons, which is a potential downside to those, but we'll get to that later. Iron Valiant, I really love on your team as well. Because of those other mons, you can use those tanks to really chip down and wear down other people's mons, and then you can come in for Iron Valiant to come in and actually finish those mons off. So, very awesome synergy between your tanks and then also Iron Valiant. And the other thing about Iron Valiant is it's very hard to predict because it's both special and physical, and it can do whatever it wants to do in that regard. So as a result, people have a very tough time figuring out exactly what your Iron Valiant, if you set it up right, is what it's trying to do. I think that makes it incredibly dangerous for this exact reason. Cons for your team, I don't think you have nearly enough offense on your team. So you have that defensive core. I love that defensive core. I wouldn't trade out any of those Mons. That being said, you're probably going to want the thing about those 3 Mons is they're not very damaging. Like, besides maybe Skeledirge with Torch, Valiant is basically your only reliable form of offense, which is super dangerous because if you get one wrong prediction on your Valiant, now your tank Mons are the only ones that you have left, and that can really be difficult when you're trying to set up for your endgame. I would recommend getting one more offensive Mon to really round out this team, and then I think that would be a very nice synergy with all of it put together. So maybe, in my opinion, maybe consider swapping out your Thunderous for Garchomp. If you can call something coming in for Garchomp, obviously you have switch-ins for Garchomp in terms of ice switch-ins. You've got your water and you've got your fire, which both can switch in for ice very, very well. You've got water to switch in for water. You've got options there. The thing about Garchomp too is if he gets one Dragon Dance off, he can just start sweeping up Mons left and right. So like just between all of that right there, I think that if you picked that up, you'd have a very good synergy for the rest of your team. I think that would really balance you out a lot better. So that would be my real addition that I would look for inside of your team. And I think that you'd have the ability to do that by sacrificing a couple of Mons that you may not use as much. So I'd recommend looking into that.
Yeah, I put this as 9th. I feel like I undervalued this because, yeah, I was really impressed by, basically the mons that Brady said, but the physical damage thing was really like, yes, Iron Valiant can go physical. Yes, Decidueye can go physical. Yes, Toxico can go physical. But besides Iron Valiant, that's really not threatening to me. Um, your tanks are good. They're really good, especially with Blissey as the cleric. Um, but then I don't know. I think all of your offense is kind of mid besides Iron Valiant. Like Thunderous is kind of more of, from my experience, unless Bleakwind has really changed him, more of kind of like out there for Thunder Waves and, then the damage kind of. It's not like powerful sweeper. Now that being said, Iron Valiant is an insanely good, um, incredible sweeper. I mean, those stats are insane. But some of the other mons are. That was my big problem with the team, is that it's too passive for me, in my opinion. Because yes, you can get stuff off, but your speed tiers, I mean, you really don't have fast mons, and you really don't have high attack, either special or regular mons here. Um, so that was why it was harder for me to put this higher. That being said, your main mons that you're going to bring every week are, or not every week, but most weeks, are incredibly strong. So if you use that and play off it'd be amazing. But I think with some swaps out towards the more offensive typing, I think there could be a lot of really great synergy here. Like I think that was almost the theme of the draft, is that a lot of the first picks and even continuing on were really, really good. And then there were a couple picks here and there that were good, but then, picks started to drop off. Maybe I'm just putting myself onto everybody else. But um but I think this team really has some huge potential if played correctly. Really, really huge. Um but I would just love to see more options to kind of take out opponents. So
I concur. And again, I want to reiterate, Iron Valiant is a mon that you don't need defense on because it doesn't have any defense. So you could
mhm.
easily come in with close combat. You could come in with Moonblast and Spirit Break. You could come in with physical and special split, and then just dump your defenses. And that's a perfectly reasonable strategy so that you can catch people by surprise. If people think that you're running physical and then they switch in, a physical tank and then you hit them with a special move, I mean, that's perfectly reasonable to do with Iron Valiant. But that being said, like, you can't base your entire team off of one Mon, and I feel like that one Mon, if that goes down, the rest of your Mons are going to have a really difficult time recovering from that. So adding something else in there that really, really balances that out would be, like Anthony said, would be huge for your team. And I think then your team would become very threatening.
No, that's an excellent point, Brady. Running it both ways is going to be kind of terrifying. So, I really look forward. Will, I think you can do a lot with this. So I'm excited to see your matches. But that's all I had to say about that one.
Great, awesome. Do we want to keep moving on?
Yeah. Let's move on to Reagan.
All right. Let me find my notes for you real quickly here, Reagan.
Our Brady's a trooper. He grinds. He grinds with the notes.
all right, here we are.
Boys and gals.
Okay. So here's what I had to say about your team, Reagan. I think that your team has the making of an awesome rain team. It missed a couple of vital components, but overall, I thought it was actually very solid. Basque Legion for swim, and adaptability, depending on how you want to run it. People could think that you'd be really, really fast, then you come with adaptability, liquidation, and just absolutely demolish a Pokemon without them expecting it. King Gambit, allowing it to resist, well, not resist, but be neutral to fire inside of the rain is huge for it. That's another thing that's really, really big for it. And then Quag is so solid at soaking up some of those water type attacks that might be used against you, or those electric type attacks that might be used against you. That is an incredibly strong synergy that those mons have together, and I think that's really, really going to come into your benefit. Additionally, Lurantis is a great mon for coming in for electric and grass type attacks. I see the dream that we're going for here. I appreciate it a lot, actually. Additionally, your Psychic, Ghost, and Dark core that you have between your Tier 0, King Gambit, and the Bass, all in all, there's a lot of positivity happening there. I think they all balance each other out very, very well. Espatra obviously being a great special sweeper, King Gambit physical, Basque Legion more physical than special, but I guess it could potentially run both. All of those put together, very, very strong together. I like the dream that you have going on there. I also think that you have a lot of immediately threatening mons, so a player would have to immediately deal with those. Like King Gambit, for an example, is an immediately threatening mon. It walks in and you know exactly what it's going to do, and it's going to come in to mess you up, right? So you have to deal with that immediately. But then, if players let enough mons get run through by King Gambit, a Spotter can then come in and sweep the rest of the game without anyone being able to do anything about it. So between the mons that you have on your team, I think in that regard you're very, very solid. You've got some decent bulk on your team between Raikou, Quagsire. I like I said, I see the dream. I see what's going on here. I like it a lot. I would say for cons, you have a couple of cons here. You're weak to a couple of the main things that rain teams are constantly weak to, which is electric and grass type attacks. Both of these are really good in your team and you need to be very wary of when you're playing against. The other thing is your team is very physically tanky, but that being said, a special attacker might come in and mess your team up a little bit. And as a result, just to kind of compound this issue, electric and grass mons, like I stated before, are especially special. So they might come in with special attacks more often than they would physical. And as a result, that could be very, very dangerous for you. So I would say that is really, really concerning for your team. One of the things that I would recommend for your team, I like Raikou, but that being said, you have the points if you dropped Raikou to potentially pick up a different mon that might be more beneficial for your team. And when I say this specifically, I'm thinking of Zapdos. Nobody's picked up Zapdos, and Zapdos is a staple for rain teams for a reason. Zapdos is really, really good against electric and grass type mons, two things that your team could really use some help with. And I think that would be very, very awesome for you. Another thing that would be also good for you is Goodra here. I think Goodra would be a really helpful mon to round out your team. It's got hydration, so it's immune to status conditions in the rain. And it's also just a special wall beyond a special wall, so nothing's going to be able to break it in that regard. I think that mon would go really, really well on your team in addition to what I've already talked about. So between those additions, I think your team could be really, really strong. But overall, I see the dream, and I like what you're thinking here. So that's my whole opinion on this. I wrote a lot for this one because I saw the potential. I see the dream, like I said.
No, that is hilarious. I was honestly after this video, I was gonna shuffle around Mons so I could pick Zapdos. So that's so funny that you recommended that. Oh, you guys can't hear, but Brady's laughing in the other room. He peeked out.
That's really funny.
Well, now I feel bad about it. Now, I mean, maybe I don't pick it up.
Hey, don't worry. I have some recommendations that aren't Zapdos for my team. Don't worry.
Because I was gonna say, well, honestly, I was gonna say Raikou is great just because of that raw power. Yeah, if you can pick up Zapdos, especially like, okay, at first, yeah, I wasn't sure why the rain was there when you were drafting, but as the Mons came in, it totally made sense. Um, yeah, I'm kind of looking through and seeing who you could kind of trade out for the points to get there. There's some things you could trade out, but not not a ton. Anyways, um yeah, that's so funny. That totally threw me off my track there. Let me look back at my notes. Um oh yeah, so the strongest synergy obviously here is Espasa King Gambit. I mean, like those two alone could sweep teams. Easy, easy. Especially in the rain, for King Gambit. It doesn't matter as much to Espathra, but she's not really bothered by it either because you just get faster and you one shot things. So that was really the biggest positive. As Brady said, the Quagsire's big. I was a doubter of the Alomo Mola. I'll say it first. You heard it here. I was a doubter, and then I checked the stats, and I was like, oh dang. Um, it's pretty good. Ravska, I have a really hard time reliably using Revival Blessing. I think it can be good. The only mon I really see it doing insane good on your team is King Gambit. Like I guess it can res Espathra, and I guess she can kind of push through it, but
I
I
mean,
don't
to be
know.
fair, a Spatra it doesn't need a whole lot of health because it's not meant to
No,
take a hit.
yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
exactly. But like something about it just like it feels like it becomes super weak to then like a sucker punch or a shadow sneak or something like that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um but I mean maybe it has more physical bulk than I'm giving it credit for. So I think this team is way better than I thought it was going to be when you picked the Politoed. I was like, where are you going with that? But yeah, you grabbed a lot. Um, yeah, now I'm going to maybe I'll let this video go for a day or two before to let you give some time to pick up the Zapdos if you want it. Um, but yeah, it's a very strong team, and I expect it to do pretty well. Depending on play. So it honestly, I had a really tough time deciding between mine and this team because this one was just pretty good. That's all I can say.
I actually ranked them exactly even, I think, in the end. So that's really funny that you say that actually.
uh,
Something about her points isn't adding up for me actually. Does she have exactly 0 by the
yeah, it
point figures?
doesn't
Well,
because
let's
I've
do the math
got
on that later because something about that doesn't make sense to me.
no. I think she's still got to have 60, but maybe I didn't change the points when I did the trade or whatever. I think that's
Because then
probably
she
it.
could trade
Because she
Gliscor
she
for.
texted the trade, but she didn't change it in draft. So I think I changed it
Okay.
out and then yeah. But we can check on that later.
We'll deal with that later. But yeah, that's with that in tow. I think you could trade out Gliscor um for Zapdos or something. But anyways, we'll come back to that later.
All right. Next, we had the worst player in the league, ranked 10th, the Greek gamer.
Yeah, honestly.
Whooshy finger hold out here. Brady, what do you think of this absolute garbage can of a team?
Well, I think garbage can's a pretty apt description. No, I'm kidding. So I guess I'll start with the pros here. Obviously, being able to choose your preferred weather in any game is very, very nice, since you can catch people by surprise and overwhelm them with power when they can't predict what type of team that you're going to bring. If you bring a sun team, they might prepare for a rain team, or vice versa. So if you're able to catch them by surprise, you could entirely sweep their team without them being able to do much about it, which is an incredible benefit. I mean, that unpredictability is going to be huge for you in the long run. Also, I think Clodsire is a great pick for both your Sun team and your Rain team. It's good for your Sun team because of Water Absorb. It's good for your Rain team because of Water Absorb. I mean, honestly, like, is there even much to say about that? Like, it's just perfect for that. Also, Clodsire is especially good into Sun because most Sun abusers are going to be special attackers, and Clodsire's special defense is awesome. It's great. So I don't see that. I see that Mon doing very, very well for your team. Walking Wake, obviously the perfect Mon for the split Sun and Rain team, since his signature move gets powered up in both of these weather conditions. Plus it double resists both fire and water, which makes it a good pivot into things as well, which is just, all in all, that's fantastic. I mean, just for the sake of you being able to abuse your weather without other people being able to abuse your weather, I mean, that's huge. That's massive. So I see that to your massive benefit over these games. Heliolisk, same concept as the other two before it. It's a great Mon in both Sun and Rain teams with two different abilities, so it's easy to get that Mon in for some serious damage and to switch out. I mean, it's a fantastic Mon in that regard. That being said, if you notice something about the last three Mons that I just pointed out, this is where the cons start coming in. They're all special. All of them. Some of the bonds that we know that you're going to be bringing on every single team, basically, they're going to be special. So as a result, at least half of your team is going to be running that way. I think you tried to fit a lot into both of these two weather conditions, and in the end, you made a really good Sun team, and your Rain team is okay. Poliwrath and Durant are fine Mons, but they don't really synergize well with some of your other team members. So if a strong grass move comes in, it's going to be hard for your team to come in and take it on. Especially in the rain, because Cerulege shouldn't be in the rain. I mean, that Mon can't really do much in the rain, because if you do bring it to a rain team, it can very easily get wiped, unless if it's your Terramon. So, as a result, I think that either Cerulege becomes very Terra hungry, or your Mons are very, very predictable as to which ones you're going to bring to which game. So if I can guess which of those two teams is better against my team, I can then prep against your exact Mons that you're bringing every single time. And if I'm smart about it, I can also bring certain tanks that would tank some of your better Mons a lot better than others. So those are the kind of things that I notice. Additionally, your Mons are weak to the ground type. And you have one immunity, and then everything else is either neutral or weak. That's very, very dangerous, especially when that's such a common type to bring against Sun teams. So, as a result, I think those two things in a nutshell are very, very dangerous against you. Especially when you're already losing turns to set up your different weather conditions and different things that you want for that. I mean, that can be pretty dangerous for you. So all I'm trying to say is that there's definitely some weaknesses in having two teams. I think that there's some benefits to having two teams, but that being said, the weaknesses are also apparent in the team building. One serious decision, I would look at what is and what it isn't necessary. For an example, one thing that you might want to consider picking up would be Dondozo. I think it works well in both of those two weather conditions as well. It's an awesome physically tanky Mon, so it can really, really pair well with your Clodsire. I think those two, putting them together, allows you to pivot in and out different Mons that you want, both in Sun and in Rain. So I think that's really, really strong, and I think that's a good idea. And at the end of the day, if you really don't think that you can make a Rain team that's worth keeping around, maybe just stick with the Sun team at this point. You have a great Sun team. I don't really think that you need the Rain team to be strong this season. But that being said, that's just an idea as well. You don't have to take my advice on that. But that being said, it's looking like a Blissey could wall a lot of your most threatening mons. So you may want to consider picking something up or doing something different that could really shake the whole team up a little bit. So
Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Because I was kind of a similar mindset. Um, I saw Walking Wake and I was like, this is gonna be, I just had to go for it because it was kind of like I'm very into versatility, and so I was like, oh, I could do both. Um, I really don't know if there's enough space in here in an 11 mon team to do both. Um, that being said, I think my first like 5 picks, like Wake, Torkoal, Pelipper, Heliolisk, Clodsire, were like the perfect picks for a dual team. I think after that, I really was kind of grabbing at straws for a fairy steel resist because I really wanted to protect my Walking Wake. And I think I didn't necessarily need that. I could just pick really tanky mons that don't resist. That being said, maybe there's something out there, that's really hefty steel that I could fit in, um, that I think would solve that problem. And then Screamtail was kind of there more as kind of a wish passer for some of the tank, but really towards the end, the one I really wanted to figure out how I could fit into it was Colossal actually, because he also feels like he's a good like sun rain synergy, with that steam engine. But the only problem with that is that he does exactly the same thing as Torkoal. So I'm
yep.
really like trying to figure out a way that he could fit into the team and not coming up with a lot. Like he's got steam engine, he's got flame body. Like that is just so tempting to have. It's literally one the other mon that's designed for both teams kind of thing, other than
That's
Heliolisk and Wake.
I
But
think that's fair. But also you have to keep in mind that a water
yeah,
move hits him and he's dead. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's in the sun. He's
that's
probably
true,
still
but
gonna die.
you can always run like a berry and or a like focus sash on him, and then he's insanely fast and has amazing stats kind of thing. But you're right, it's definitely like you're probably it's probably he's not a great mon, but I really wanted him to work, and he gets
Unless you
rocks.
use him as your Terramon, because you could Terra Water him, and then he's, got his speed
Oh,
boost.
you should not have said. No, I'm kidding. Thank you for saying that.
Don't
That's
worry, Wolf
that's
Glick gave me that idea when he ran his gym, so I didn't come up with that. But
that's amazing. It's probably a waste of a Terra, but I might think about that.
it
Um,
would be it'd be cheeky, I'll tell you that
it'd
much.
be I am nothing if not cheeky. That's why I'm really gonna try to make the double team work. Um, and then if it's really not working mid season, then I'll switch out like 3 mons or try to change it back to Sun. But but for now, the Cerule Edge was my kind of sorry, I'm going on and on about my team. The Cerule Edge was my kind of idea for like a strong physical mon, but that really does invalidate my rain team. So I think I need to look around a little bit and make some switches. I think with that it'll get stronger. Um, but we'll see if you can viably run 2 types of weather in a draft league. But
I'm
yeah,
excited to see how that pans out. I really am, actually.
me too, me too. Then thank you for your feedback. I'm definitely gonna take it.
Yeah, of course.
All right, moving right along to Konner.
Okay. So, Konner, let me pull you up real quick here. Perfect. Okay. So, I have to say, for pros for your team for your first draft league, I am just super impressed with this team comp. Bax plus Heatran plus a Alolan Ninetales is just grossly good. People are going to have to be very, very conscious about your team and what it's trying to do, because if Bax comes in on a neutral mon or something like that, and it's got Hail up and it's got Aurora Veil set up, that Mon is going to sweep your entire team. Just frankly, I mean, that Mon in of itself has just such good type coverage that it can easily do what it needs to do. It's horrifying what that can do. So like it's not even funny how bad that is already. Like obviously, I mean, like I could go on and on about Bax and Snow, but that being said, like you get the picture. It's pretty terrifying. Plus, on the other side of things, Heatran is such a great fire and
Ugh.
steel answer.
Ugh.
It is the perfect synergy with your Alolan Ninetales for that exact reason. It can come in almost for free against mons like that and mess stuff up and get away pretty frequently. Also, it pairs Slooper with Slowking, who can also set up Snow on his way out with Chilly Reception. All in all of these mons switching in and out are incredibly dangerous. Plus, in addition to that, your choice of mons that are weak to ice moves, specifically putting them on your ice team, is super, super smart. Because you have mons that automatically resist ice, so you might as well balance yourself out with mons that are specifically weak to that, because then the other ones can just come in and pivot in easily. So like Toedscruel and Anonymous are two great options that I love on your team. Just great mons in general. Cons for your team. You have a lot of ice mons. So your non-ice mons are really going to be carrying a lot of weight in this season. Like if Heatran goes down, oh my gosh, your team is going to have a hole right through the middle of it where somebody could come in with one mon and sweep your entire team. You need to be incredibly conscious with those mons, and as a result, I might even recommend that you drop some other ice mons, like Frostlass, great mon. I really like Frostlass. That doesn't mean that it's the perfect mon on your team. Same thing goes with Satitan. Satitan obviously belly drum. It can come in with Ice Shard after the fact. Super great mon. That being said, is it the perfect mon? I don't, I don't know. There's other options out there that I think could do similar roles that would give you a little bit more type coverage that would allow you to resist things better overall and wouldn't make it so that your team is so monotype, because monotype teams very dangerous at times for that exact reason. Additionally, your team is incredibly weak to rocks. Rocks is something that if somebody sets up rocks on your team, I mean, most of your mons would lose 25% of their health almost immediately. You need to make sure that you have good hazard removal on your team. Otherwise, you're going to be in a world of hurt if you ever switch in and out mons. Heavy duty boots are going to be a must-have on a lot of your mons, and as a result, that's going to suck for your team because your team is going to want very powerful, like loaded dice on Baxcalibur. You're going to want loaded dice for its scale shots that you can just buff its speed and get a crap load of damage along with Icicle Spear, right? I mean, those are the kind of things that you want, but to get those, you need to make sure that you're not losing health to make that happen. So, rocks are super, super dangerous against you for that exact reason. That's all. Those are the only really recommendations that I had, though. Your team is very scary. I was telling people that when you were drafting, like I was like, holy crap, this is not. I'm not looking forward to fighting this team. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, for your first draft league, dude, you drafted absolutely incredibly. Like you did not need, you know, uh too much help to make your team the monster that it is. Um
Yeah, did you help
Brady can,
Konner?
huh?
Did you help Konner?
I didn't. I thought he went to the front office a little bit, but I could be wrong.
I didn't help Konner at all.
Yeah.
So
So maybe this is all you, in which case, dude, you're incredible. You should
that's
be
a
doing this
really
analysis, not us. But yeah, and Brady can testify when you picked the Heatran, I literally like screamed through the wall, no. I was like so upset that I didn't take that first because I tunnel vision my other ones, but all's fair in love and war, and we got a little bit of both going on, Konner, wink wink. But as far as the actual mons on your team, uh, again, crazy synergies. Baxcalibur, Ninetales, Alola, Enamorous, and Card. Like this is just and you essentially have a Volt Switch team without having anybody who Volt Switches on your team with Slowking and Orthworm. So like there's a lot of really cheeky strategies in there. Um, about what Brady said about the Ice Mons, I agree. It's a lot of ice. It's a lot of ice, and for one of the weakest types, that being said, if you got Snow up, You get that buff. Um, I believe it's 2
Defense. Yeah,
defense. Yeah, yeah.
50%. 50%
That's
pure
what I thought.
defense.
It's not going to be as big of a deal, but if you've just got that much, it's going to be rough. I kind of like the Titan as kind of a revenge killer with that ice shard belly drum, because if you switch in on something, either you could get the ice shard or you can switch out. Like, I don't know. Other than that, I'm not seeing a lot of speed tiering on this if you get rid of the Frostlass. If you get the Frostlass, that's pretty fast, but honestly, the Frostlass and the Abominusnow, I was thinking, because like the only problem I have with the Abominusnow is like, when are you going to bring Abominusnow when you aren't going to bring Ninetales? You know, they kind of have the same problems, and Ninetales is just kind of better in my opinion. Now you can talk to Jalen, and last time I was like, Ninetales, you know, I don't know about that Mon, but he did absolutely fantastically, and he changed my mind about it. So maybe Abominusnow is in the same bucket, but it seems to me like it does a lot of the same things as some of the other Mons. But it is a tier 5, so it's not that big of a deal. Um, yeah, other than that, I was surprised by the Carbink, but the more I think about it, the more it kind of makes sense on your team, because it's you know, just another physical tank with the Orthworm, um, but it's got that really kooky ability. So you know, we could see some fun things coming out of this team. But regardless, great team, excellent draft. You know, switch out or not, this is going to be a threat that everyone should watch out for. So I am excited to see how things go.
Well, especially, I wanna accentuate one thing about Orthworm too. The funny thing about Orthworm to me is it covers Heatran so well because Heatran's immune to fire and Orthworm's immune to ground, right? So they
Hmm.
can two steel mons that like should in theory be absolutely destroyed by two of their biggest weaknesses cover each other's weaknesses so incredibly well. So like it's weird to me, but they kind of work. Um, and normally I would agree with you about Abomasnow. But here's the weird thing about this season. Everybody and their sister is running weather. So having two
That
weather
is
setters
true.
may not be the worst thing in the world, honestly.
I guess, but like, when are you gonna bring Abominus when you don't bring Ninetales? You know what I mean? Or are
What if
you
you
are you
brought
talking
both?
about bringing both? I guess that's a possibility, especially since Abominus is slower, and whoever's the slowest gets to set. So you never know.
Yeah, I mean there's definite there's possibilities. We have ideas here, folks. We have ideas.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely possibility there, um, but there is just a lot of ice. But
There
it
is.
could work. It could work. Maybe Connor's gonna become a gym leader.
Did anybody pick up Azumarill?
No, that's a mon I was really surprised, and also one I was looking at to trade. um,
Well, I was gonna say because the Titan could be swapped out from Azumarill, and then you'd have some more coverage
yeah, but
against
then you
like
get
fighting
no
and then
like
also
prio
fire.
and not a lot of speed
Aqua Jet.
control. Yeah, yeah. Oh,
And
yeah,
it
I
has Belly
forgot.
Drum as well. It's the same thing as the Titan,
That's
only it just
true.
covers.
That's true. Yeah, okay. Ah, man. Now I'm gonna wait a couple days and all my all my mons are gonna be picked. But to
I
be
didn't mean
honest,
to
that's
do
good.
this to you.
No, 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 it's good. Um, no, it's good because I'm sure I'll find something else. I was wanting even more than that. But um, yeah, really fantastic team. Great job, Connor. Excited to see you out on the battlefield. All right. Next up we got Camden. Camden.
All right. Oh, you. I'm not happy with you this season.
Oh,
All right,
jeez.
let's get this over with already. All right. So pros for your team. You have some very strong synergy between your tanky mons, Tangrowth, Klefki, Gastrodon, Bronzong. All of these work really, really well in conjunction with one another. You don't need me to tell you this because this is just a fact. Everyone knows it, right? You can pivot around and find an opening for Tapu or Iron Bundle to come in, and that can really, really mess people up. Tapu Koko and Sneasler obviously work really, really well together. Either as Unburden or a Volt turn duo. Really nice synergy there. There's nothing to complain about those two mons. Um, Also, Iron Bundle and Jugulus's ability to come in and be powered up by your electric terrain that your Coco sets. Super fun idea, super cool. You can easily find a way to switch around with your tanky mons until one of those mons can come in, and then other teams need to beware because that is going to be incredibly strong against a lot of teams.
Mm-hmm.
Your team would have been weak to water had you not stolen the one mon that I wanted from my team. So you know what? That's another pro for your team. So good job.
You sure that's not a
You like
con?
no, that's gonna be a pro. I'll give it to him. I'll give it to him. I'm a little upsetty, but I'll give it to him. All right. Cons. Your team doesn't have a lot of great answers to the ghost type. If Jugulus is removed, you may have a problem with that going forward. Just a lot of neutrality there. And ghost is a very common neutral type that a lot of people like to use. So just be careful with that. Your team is also a little dragon weak. You in my opinion, there's no way in your right mind that you're bringing both Clefly and Bronzong. They do the same thing, basically. So, because they function so similarly, you're only going to have one resist to most dragons. And they almost always bring either a fire or a ground type move to deal with steel mons. So, once that one mon is gone, now you have everything neutral to dragon. And a dragon can come in and, like, just rock your entire team. So, that's something that you have to be definitely aware of. And I would say the biggest problem with your team is that you don't have the ability to set up with many of your mons. You're going to be, as a result of that, you're probably going to be winning a lot of games by pivoting a lot, which makes you incredibly weak to hazards. And hazard removal is something that is just going to be beyond necessary on your team. So if you don't think that you have good enough hazard removal on your team, I would recommend picking some more up because it's definitely a necessity. It's more important for you to have hazards away from your side of the field than it is to have it on the opponent's side of the field. I'll put it that way for you. Just looking at your team, I just see a lot of problems in the future. Iron Bundle being weak to them, Iron Jugulus being weak to them. I mean, like, you just have a lot of your best mons are very, very hazard weak. So just keep that in mind going forward. But overall, very solid team. I have no complaints besides the fact that you just absolutely wrecked my Gastrodon pick because that would have been big for my team. So yeah, I'll pass it over to you, Anthony.
Yeah, it's a good team. It's got a lot of really strong synergies. It's got a lot of really good mons. Continuing off of what you said, Brady, really what I think this team could benefit from is kind of like almost ignoring the hazards and just picking up a full-time like dedicated cleric. Like a wish passer on this team would be so incredibly nasty. I mean, you have so many mons that are just really tanky, and like some of them have recover, some of them don't, but like I could really see just kind of like an infinite infinite loop where you kind of just chip down your opponents to death, because as Brady said, you don't really have a ton of setup mons. It's just, I mean, you've got the Sneasler, you've got, the irons, but it feels more as if you're kind of going for a bruiser type deal. And that's kind of what it seemed like last season as well. I mean, the play style, it seemed more of like there was a little bit of setup. So maybe you'll use these in setup, and I'm not quite seeing that. But it feels like this team would really do well from just like looping the enemy until they're entirely drained. So I guess minus the Shed Ninja. That's such an awesome pick.
I mean,
Um,
the thing about Sid Ninja, even without Terra, if somebody doesn't prep for it and by the end of the game they don't have a
right,
move that can deal
right,
with it,
yeah,
I mean, you could have the strongest mon in the game,
and
and
it
like
still
Iron, you
loses.
could have an Iron Paladin at the end of the game, and it would lose to Shin Ninja if it doesn't have a coverage move, which is just hilarious to think about. Like, I don't think that it's gonna happen very often, but
But
if
when
it
it
does
does, yeah,
happen,
yeah, yeah.
it's gonna be hilarious.
No, it's really funny. Yeah, we specifically, I remember talking about this before because I was like, what if somebody just tears Shid Ninja and then is immune? And so I added a little note, but um, uh, yeah, it's a really cool team. I think it's got a lot of potential, but yeah, either I guess it could use more more kind of sweep setup. But for me, I would just throw a cleric on this and call it good, and just loop the opponent until they die. That would be like insane for this team. So
I know that you and I have a lot of different play styles. That being said, I know Camden found a lot of success with setup mons. Tarakion last season with Swords
yeah,
Dance, and
yeah,
then
which
also
was
Rayquaza
interesting.
with Dragon Dance. So when I look at those mons, I think, okay, well, he probably would find a lot of success through a setup mon. But you have a good point where a cleric is another venue that you could take that would also probably provide a lot of help too. So
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say is like it feels like this team is just so set up for a cleric, but based on Camden's play, and we are just kind of ranking the teams. The rank specifically came from the team itself, not past play styles. But just looking at it now, like I'm sure you'll use it like a setup. Well, I guess I'm not sure. Maybe you want to try something different, but it just screams out like Lupum cleric team. Like this would be insane like that. So we'll see how he decides to use it.
I concur. I think it'll be fun to see how that plans out. So
All right, coming in at number 2, we have Brady. Woo 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 woo.
oh man, what can I say about this guy? Not a lot.
Amazing.
um. Okay. Pros. My team is clearly very bulky, and with sticky web support, it could be very dangerous against my opponents. I think that Dragonite, Goldango, and Ursaluna are all pair incredibly well together to form a strong trio of mons that will take care of other threats. All of them have recovery moves as well, so they're very, very difficult to kill. All of them can set up, so they can function differently every single game. They're all switchblades, with maybe the exception of Ursaluna in there. Um, they can all go for immediate damage, or they could set up. So that's what I'm trying to say when I say that, by the way. And I think most of them have priority. I don't know if Goldango has priority, but the other two do.
I think it gets
Um,
Shadow Sneak.
it might. Um, and then I think that Brute Bonnet, Rotom Heat, Quaquaval, they all also pair well together. They all have decent speed tiers, and they have strong synergy with one another. That another core that I could bring to my team that are fairly tanky as well. Um, And then last but not least, y'all are gonna laugh at me, but Spidops, I'm still over the moon about my Spidops pick. That mon is just slept on. It is so good. I love it so much. I think that it's just like you can get entry hazards down. You can stop people from putting down their own entry hazards. You can remove people who are gonna potentially try to remove entry hazards. I mean, it's just that plus Goldango on my team that prevents people from defogging and rapid spinning. I mean, like that's incredibly strong synergy on my team. So just that alone is a really, really strong component of my team as well. Um, Big con for my team. I'm not in love with my team's special defense. It's not horrible, but there are definitely holes in that defense right there. Um, I don't have an awesome switch into most water and ice type mons. And that could be pretty dangerous for me. I wonder what mon could have really helped me with all of this that I'm talking about right here. um, my team's a little weak to fighting. I only have one immunity, and everything else is pretty much neutral or weak, which is a problem. Um, and then some of the speed tiers of my mons are really low this season, and to the point where sticky webs might not matter for a lot of them. So that's kind of a problem too. I haven't really thought of a good way around a lot of that. I've been thinking of ways, but that being said, that it's not the perfect team, but I definitely like my team overall. So
Yeah, I put this as number 1. I think you're really undervaluing yourself quite a lot, honestly. Like this is for sure when I look at all these teams, this is the scariest team to me. Um just straight up. It's just so many threats that can, if you're not careful, if you miss a move, can just totally bowl you over. Like I was thinking you can run Ursaluna, Goldango, uh, Dragonite, Metagross, even like Quaquaval and Verizon in any like combo that you want, and then you have pretty good coverage that you can switch around. That then if your opponent makes one misstep, they're done. They're done. So in my mind, this is undoubtedly like in the number 1 position. for sure. Um, what you said about the webs is true. I think you just really like webs, which is fair
Love
because
them.
they're really good. Especially some teams in this league do have lower speed tiers. Um, so you're taking advantage of that. But um, yeah, if it wasn't you, webs do not belong on this team. Spied Ops is a really good mon for tier 5. We maybe will have to think about moving him around in the future, um but I I don't think you need webs on this team. That being said, um it's such a good team. I
Well,
had,
just like
written down, sorry.
look at Goldango, look at Quavo naturally, look at Rotom Heat naturally. All
Mhm.
of these mons are around the 80 speed tier, which is
Mhm.
good. It's not great, right?
Yeah,
So all of them
exactly.
either need a scarf or they need to somehow lower their opponent's speed.
Well, I
So if you
thought you
think
were
about
kind
it
of
that
gonna
way,
go more with like, you've got the Aqua Step, and then you've got like a tanky Ursaluna kind of thing.
for
So
sure.
I guess this does potentially allow you to run some different sets, but I really don't know if it needs it, especially with like a Dragonite D-Dance, a Quaquaval, a Verizon. Like, and you brought in the Wug Trio, which you said was not, your favorite pick, but um
Yeah, I'll be honest, I was just spitballing at that
yeah.
point. I was like, it's a fast mod, it'll do the trick. I needed some more speed on my team, and I was like, it's fine. But it didn't really do anything massive for my team, so I kind of went, meh.
Yeah, the one thing I did write down is another thing you caught is that it is not as tanky as it could be. You've got a lot of bruisers, but nothing that I see and go, that's a wall. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
you can run a lot of things defensively, which also kind of keeps your opponents on your toes, so maybe it's a good thing. But there's nothing that's like wall, you know. So the giraffe or the Graphii is also kind of an interesting pick. I think you picked it up for functions similar to the Spied Ops, where you kind of just status up your opponents and screen up. I think it gets screens, right?
I don't think it gets
Um,
screens. It gets parting shot, so it can come in, it can lower your attack and special attack by one stage. It gets
mhm.
knockoff, it gets U-turn, um,
And then
it gets toxic,
toxic
it's
and yeah. So
and prankster. It's just super annoying. It's a really I don't know if you've ever fought one in like a
no,
bandit
I
board.
have, but
It's a super annoying mon to fight, which is why I picked it because I was like, oh yeah, toxic monkey can be toxic. That's fun.
funny. Um, yeah, I don't. I mean, maybe it works in this team, and I'm just not seeing it. Since you don't have like super duper hazard setters, that's kind of like to make up for it outside of the Spied Ops. I mean, but but maybe I'm just overlooking it and haven't played a lot with it. So this is without a doubt in my mind the best team currently, and it's going to be super super hard to beat. But
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you all. I'm excited about this team. I don't know if it's as good as my team last season, but it still is really strong. So I
I
like
think
it a
it's
lot.
better than your team last season, honestly.
Well, we'll just have to see
Well,
how it plays
better
out in the long run.
regarding the level of Pokemon. Like it's better drafted than last season, and
Sure.
last season
Okay.
you were insane. So
I don't know if I'd go that far. Also, one thing that we never mentioned was Metagross, which is kind of funny because Metagross is obviously such a powerful
well,
mon.
I've been dancing around him the whole time. Like he's one of the mons I include in like the you can be kind of tanky. He can also set up rocks. Like he's got a bunch of he's a bruiser. So I've been referring to him the whole time, but I haven't called him out by name. Like
For sure.
he's a strong boy.
He's a strong boy. I like him a lot. It's just he's a little bit of an interesting one too because it's like he's kind of like a knockoff Solgaleo. So I guess we'll have to see how that works out this season.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. Finally, but not uh, lastly, firstly, we have Jalen with his beautiful team. So Brady, what are your final thoughts on our final team?
Yeah, so I mean, Jalen and I talked about his team last night. So that being said, this is mainly for other people other than Jalen. What I'm going to say here, but that being said, I mean, where to start with this team? Um, Reggie Alecki and Meowscarada are terrifying, terrifying together. Those two Mons are able to Volt Turn all game, and nobody can do anything about it. If you make your Terramon Reggie Alecki, um, you have so much synergy with one another that nobody can really work around. Like Reggie Alecki, I was talking about this with Jalen. Reggie Alecki has a base 100 special attack. With Transistor and Stab, it becomes so much stronger than that. And then with Terra, you can also get Ice. You can get Bolt Beam coverage. And it's just so fast that nothing can outspeed it. Even Scarfed Mons can't outspeed Reggie Alecki. You need priority to hit this thing faster than it can hit you. Which is just, I mean, just insanity to even think about, right? And then on top of that, you got Meowscarada, an incredibly fast Mon that can U-turn out, and it gets stab on whatever it wants because of Protean. Not to mention, additionally on top of that, it's also like a multi-tool kind of Pokemon because it can set Toxic Spikes, it can knock off, it can Sucker Punch, it can Flower Trick, it can U-turn. It's got so many options in its arsenal that it can do a lot of stuff in any game that it wants to, and it can make a huge impact just by being around. So between those two Mons alone, that is an incredible Volt Turn combination that cover each other so well. Um, on top of that, Celesteela and Suicune, great synergy together. They're obviously weak to the electric type together, but that being said, if you're using an electric type move, who are you going to be calling in again? You're going to be calling in Meowscarada or Regieleki, depending on who wants to come in, which is just scary to even think about because then you're just baiting in mons that want to come in. Other than that, they synergize super well together. Um, so I guess enough said there. Grimmsnarl is an amazing mon this season. It's got Parting Shot, so it can function as a support with screen setup with Prankster. Or it can bulk up setup, and it can also have rest talking sets. Um, it's got everything that it needs in its arsenal to either sweep or it can also be support, and you just don't know what you're gonna get until you get there. Um, Haxorus is great if you set up screens with Grimmsnarl. Haxorus comes in for one turn, Dragon Dances once, and then it blows through entire teams. I mean, I don't even have to say anything else. Haxorus was critically underrated this season, in my opinion. Um, Haxorus is incredibly good with loaded dice this season, so I'll just leave it at that. It's just an amazing mon this season. I think that you're going to find a lot of success there. Um, Volbeat, we talked about this. Interesting enough about Volbeat. Volbeat is a Tail Glow user that can baton pass Tail Glow. So if you're not careful, Regieleki could get a 2.5 boost to its special attack, and it can go through your entire team with Bolt Beam coverage. So that's fun. And then Miltank, to round everything out, is an awesome tank that also has some speed that can set up rocks and do a lot of fun stuff like Heal Bell. So kind of a cleric, kind of not. Um, all in all, incredibly powerful team. I cannot stress this enough that people are going to have a really difficult time with this team. And the reason why, especially, I think that is because I know Jalen's playstyle. So I know that we're not supposed to take playstyle into account here. But that being said, like, having a multi-tool team is exactly what Jalen really would, I think, function well with. So all the ones that I've talked about are for that exact reason. Cons for your team. Your team doesn't have a whole lot of natural physical bulk. That's the one thing. You have tanks, but these tanks can be worn down over time, so you have to be careful with your switch-ins. Um, Volt turning is an amazing strategy, but the biggest thing about volt turning is, to some level, you need hazard removal. Otherwise, those two mons get worn down really easily, and then any priority move can come in and one-shot them. So, I mean, there are things that can be improved here, but honestly, in most matchups, this team is going to be very scary to fight. So, yeah, that's my whole synopsis here. What do you have here, Tony?
Yeah, I thought this was a strong team, and especially when I saw the trades. Miascarda was also something I was looking at when I first drafted because it's just such a good mon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, really seeing the combos here, like the Suicune trade out was really good. I think the Miltank works really good on your team to kind of combat all the weather that's coming in. Um, and I don't know about Volbeat yet. I really haven't seen it used a lot. I know it gets tail glow. I know the pass could be insane. And I guess for a T5 that kind of makes sense. But the big thing for me on this team was like the tier 5s and then Delphox. Like I think they offer some decent coverage. And I think it could work, but like just looking at this on a team basis, um, those were the mons that were really like, what is this guy kind of gonna do here? And we'll see. Maybe they're gonna do a lot, but
Hmm.
that was kind of what I thought. Before the trades, I think the team was a lot weaker, but after the trades, I really like that. Especially, I don't know why, but I think getting rid of the Manaphy for Suicune was really good. Um, Again, yeah, Regieleki, Celestia, Grimmsnarl, Meowscarda. That is just insane switch potential. Um, yeah, it's a really good team, and I think that Okidogi was also a really good choice for some of that physical kind of beefiness. Um, Actually, you might have said exactly that, um, but that's what I was thinking when I was looking at this team was that it was a really good pickup kind of midway through the draft. Um, yeah, so that's all I kind of had on this team. It's really going to be strong. It's going to be hard to beat. You really have to be careful with this team too about your switch-ins that you don't switch into the wrong move. So it's gonna have to be predictions, but not like not double predictions. You know what I mean? Um, because a lot of your really strong mons don't have like don't have kind of backup strategies, I guess. But if you play it right, it's gonna be a really scary team.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that this team is scary. I think actually, funny enough, I think Okidogi might be the exception to the rule. That and Delphox. I think those are the two weakest picks out of the bunch. And I
Really,
don't like
I
Okidogi
love the Okidogi, but I wasn't a fan of the Delphox.
because yeah, well the Delphox. I think Delphox is fine. It's got Mystical Fire, which is cool and everything, and it's got a high special defense, so that's great. But the thing about Okidogi is like Grimmsnarl kind of just does it better at this point. Like if you look at those two mons side by side, Grimmsnarl can do bulk up, and it can do prankster bulk
Yeah,
up, so it can
but
get
it doesn't have
stronger
that like
faster.
drain punch bulk up kind of synergy.
No, but I mean it's got like Spirit Break and things like that for special attackers that want to come in on a bulk up mon.
Hmm.
So I mean, in my opinion, it offers a lot more at the very least. If I'm looking at those two, I look at Grimmsnarl and I say this mon probably overall is going to be better in a season. Not to say Okidogi's terrible or anything. It's just that Grimmsnarl just kind of it does that. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Hmm.
But I'm not. I think it's one of his weaker mons, but that's out of a team of very strong mons. And I'm with you that the Volbeat's very very like it's situational, but as a T5, like I'm never gonna bring Wug Trio, you know what I mean?
Uh,
Compared to Quavo,
well,
basically. So like,
I don't know. I think there's some T5s on here that are really like solid with the team.
yeah,
So I
like
think
Spider.
there's possibly hey, let's calm down. There's possibly uh some some things out there that work better. But what you said about the tail glow baton pass, I think that's reason enough to keep it around. So
Yep.
so yeah, that is it. Brady, any final thoughts on the overall teams and picks this year and thoughts going forward into the season?
Honestly, like last season I probably wrote a page of notes. This season I told Anthony I wrote like 2,600 words of page. So it was just
He was
several
grinding.
pages of notes. So like, guys, I mean, our play is getting more complex. Our picks are getting more complex. It takes more complexity to answer some of these questions, and I love every minute of it. So good job on your picks, guys. I mean, like I said, all of these teams are fantastic in their own right. Could they be better? Absolutely. Every single team could improve in some way, shape, and form. But everybody should be proud of the teams that they've put together and I'm really looking forward to this season. I think this season's going to be a lot closer than the last season was. So I'm excited to see some of the play. I really am. I want to see some people shake it up. I want to lose. I'll put it that way. I want to see myself lose a bunch this season. I want you guys to kick my ass. So I'm excited to make that. I'm excited to see you guys make that happen. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, just to mirror that sentiment, these picks had me blown out of the water. Some things that I saw and was like, "Whoa," and things that I really didn't expect. I feel like I'm out of the water on some of these picks and teams that kind of came together behind my back, and crazy good picks from people who've never even done draft league, like Mundie and Konner. So, yeah, I'm expecting. Honestly, with picks this good, I'm totally expecting performance and play to just like be pretty cool. And I feel like we're really set up to have a really awesome competitive season. I'm sure we'll still have, a lot of learning along the way, but I think it's really going to be like just kind of a stellar season, and I'm so excited to see what kind of crazy tricks people pull out. So
Absolutely, amen to that one.
okay, final wrap up. So this video will be going out probably tonight. You're gonna have till Sunday evening to finalize your picks. The schedule will be up soon, hopefully, in the next day or two, but by the latest by this weekend. And then games will start next week. So you can trade as much as you want this week, but by Sunday, all your trades are done. You will only have those 3 trades left. So, take our advice or don't, as you please. I'll try to wait a day or two to give people time if they want to take any of the ones that were mentioned. Cough, cough, Reagan. Cough, cough.
Give them
Also,
exactly 24 hours.
maybe I will. Maybe I will. I feel like that's enough time.
Put some pressure on. Put some pressure on.
But yeah, thank you guys all for playing. This really is a super fun time, and we couldn't do it without everybody participating and having a good time. So thanks for being an amazing Bidoof Showdown tournament community. I'm really thankful. So
Y'all are fantastic. Thanks for making this all come together. We couldn't do it without you. So thanks for coming in, and I'm looking forward to the season, guys.
all right, peace out.
Peace.